Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Tiger Sidelines. This is Gabe DeArmond, Dave Matter, and I'm Bo Bayman. Wearing the blue today because I made a bet with Brian Austin. I said, you know, Missouri's going to score more than 8 points, and he said, no, they're not, and he was the winner. 29-7, Kentucky wins in a rain-soaked but just a terrible offensive game for the Missouri Tigers.
Yeah, it was. We thought it couldn't get much worse at Vandy, and they proved us wrong. And it can get worse. It was really bad. And the defense wasn't great, but that wasn't the real problem. It was the offense again.
0-3 now on the road as they've lost back-to-back games at Vandy and at Kentucky. And now the question simply becomes what happens with the rest of the year.
Yeah, nobody knows. I mean, this has been the most Jekyll and Hyde team I've ever seen. You know, you think they're going to be good, just absolutely lose it week one, then come back. And they didn't just win 5 games. They looked good.
Right.
I mean, they played well. And then I remain convinced that there is something that we don't know about this team. I don't know what it is, but something had to have happened after the Ole Miss game because there's no logical explanation for how they went from pretty good to what we've seen the last 2 weeks, which is the worst team in the worst half of the SEC.
And it can't be associated. I mean, part of it's Cale Garrett going out, but he was out for Ole Miss.
And he doesn't play on offense.
And he doesn't play on offense.
I think part of it, too, is like I think we saw those defensive touchdowns and we're just like, okay, maybe that won't happen all the time, but those are kind of flukish. And when you don't get those and all of a sudden now your offense actually has to score some points in a close game and they can't, it's kind of alarming. And I don't know. I think there could be more to his knee, Kelly Bryant's knee, because it's fine on running the ball. He can't throw deep anymore. They don't even try. And that's you need a strong knee to be able to hold yourself up to throw a deep pass, and they don't even try anymore.
But he played well against Ole Miss.
He
I
did.
don't know if they threw the ball deep.
But maybe
really
something happened in
remember,
practice, or who knows.
It's interesting because as we dissect the offense, I mean, they couldn't get anything going. They got one screen pass that went 74 yards, and that was it.
Well, and then they actually had a pretty good drive. When Taylor Powell came in, they drove all the way to the 17 and then threw on 4th down to a guy who's dropped more passes than he's caught this year. And it wasn't a perfect pass, but it was a drop. And that, look, I haven't watched every football game that's ever been played, but if there's a worse performance by a receiving corps than what Missouri did on Saturday night, I've not seen it.
Another thing that could have changed the game is Missouri does go down, and they set up for a field goal, and Tucker McCann misses wide right by practically a football field.
Yeah, and that was a drive where they ran the ball pretty effectively. They had runs, couple 6-yard runs, a 13-yard run. Bryant had a scramble. I was confused. Why'd you stop doing what got you in position to kick a field goal there? They just started throwing it like crazy in the rain, and on a night when the receivers had no interest in catching the ball. I just didn't understand a lot of what went on.
It's interesting, too, how we thought before the season the offensive line was going to be one of the strengths of this team. There was a red flag a little bit at Wyoming because we were like, boy, they got pushed around a little bit. They have not gelled like anybody thought they would.
Well, and it's not just that. I mean, the running game hasn't been great. They've given up some pressure, but the penalties are out of control. I mean, on the play where Kelly Bryant got hurt, which actually would have put them at the 15, Yasir Durant held. I watched that play like 5 times. I never really saw a hold, but even if he held, it was a defensive lineman 5 yards behind Bryant. He's not catching Kelly Bryant. Larry Borum had a needless hold on an end around by Cam Scott that wasn't going to work anyway because Kelly Bryant wasn't particularly interested in blocking for him. But, I mean, Trevor Wallace-Sims is picking up a penalty every game. Case Cook made an appearance on the penalty list.
And the game turns really in the last, 50 seconds of the first half, when Missouri has the ball and inexplicably calls timeout, doesn't go to the locker room, there's a sack fumble, then all of a sudden there's a touchdown, and you go from being down 15 to down 22 like that.
Right. Even if they thought Kentucky was going to call a timeout after the sack on 2nd down, don't give it to them. You know, let them burn it. And then you call another pass play, and everything that could have gone bad went bad. Sack, fumble, like you said, they take over, really good field position. And then on 1st down for Kentucky's series, you get a face mask penalty. So you push them even closer. So it was about as poorly run as it could be. I wonder, if you're Derek Dooley up in the booth watching that, are you really wanting to call a timeout? Do you want to keep trying there? But Barry's the one that called it, so I don't know. I think
Like, haven't they talked about that?
You would think.
I mean, did you realize at the stadium that it was
Yes.
Missouri's timeout? Because I'm
Right.
watching TV, and I
And you
just
think
kind of
it's Kentucky.
assumed this is Kentucky trying
Right.
to make them punt in bad weather.
And we went and rewatched that part. Tom Hart and Jordan Rogers started talking about how to hold a ball. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they didn't even acknowledge a timeout was called because they were very wrapped up in the wet ball stuff. But yeah, at the game they called it right away. We're like, why would you do that right now? Just
this wasn't hindsight.
Just
This
go
was
into the locker room.
this was immediately everybody knew he made the wrong call.
And then Missouri comes out in the second half. They throw the swing pass to Tyler Beatty. He takes it to the house, and you're like, okay, maybe this is the half that they're going to play well.
And they got a turnover right after that.
Yeah.
Like, Missouri had the ball at midfield, 22-7, and I thought, you know, if they can even get a field goal here, which is kind of off the table for this team right now, but if they can score somehow here, we've seen crazier comebacks.
And that defense got a stop on every drive except for the one time when they had to force Kentucky to punt.
Well,
and
the
did not
defense
cover
got
the
to
punt.
stop there.
Right, the defense got to stop. Except the special teams didn't, and they extended that drive and they scored another touchdown.
And that was such a heady play by that guy. And apparently, he's got the green light to do that.
I mean, it was, but that's on Missouri.
For sure.
He's done that every punt all game long. You rush two guys. The other 7 were turned around. I mean, clearly nobody had told Missouri on the sideline, hey, you know, he might do this.
Right.
You've got to
Right.
pay some attention. You can't just take – and as bad as the special teams has been for a year, like there were times this year where it looked better, but I'm sorry, Andy Hill that's on him.
Yeah, and this was also the first time they lined up 2 punt returners back there. I guess because he's such a good punter, they wanted to have 2 guys back there. Well, when you take a guy away from the line and a rusher, you've got an open lane somewhere, and the punter figured that out.
And Missouri's punt return team has been bad enough. I would line up no returners. I would just say, just don't touch it. We're not going to be worse.
And like you said, they had 2 gunners coming on the outside that sort of did it lackadaisically, and then the other 7 turned and ran.
Yeah.
And nobody watched them.
And the guys on the outside were true freshman Stacy Brown and walk-on Cannon York. And look, at some point when your special teams are this bad, don't you have to put guys out there who have been out there before?
Yeah.
You know?
Defensively, the team was okay, I thought. I mean, it's one of those things where, and Gabe, you pointed this out during the game, you get to a point where you're not going to get any help.
Yeah, they looked kind of defeated. I mean, they were missing tackles. They couldn't get off blocks. It was like the rain helped Kentucky because they were running it, and Missouri looked like they were just slip sliding all over the place. Guys were just out of position here or there. And the thing is, you knew what Kentucky was going to do. I mean, it's not like they were a threat to throw. They completed the 1 pass downfield. Other than that, they just lined up and ran the entire game. And they got some stops, but not nearly enough.
This isn't quite 2015 levels where when Missouri gave up a field goal, you're like, that's it.
That
game's over. But the one kind of disheartening part was there's only one way Kentucky can beat you. I mean, the analogy I made was it's like losing 4-3 to the Giants and giving up 4 solo home runs to Barry Bonds. At least make Jeff Kent hit one. You know, and Missouri never did.
And I thought the penalties again, I mean, this team again, they hit hardest after the whistle sometimes. And that is a bad sign. I mean, Jarvis Ware cannot keep himself away from the other team, just constantly talking, hitting after the whistle. I mean, at some point, you got to say, dude, either you want to play the right way or you can't play.
Well, and the one thing that really stood out to me, like, that's a terrible weather, all that. Lynn Bowden looked like he was having more fun than he'd ever had in his life. And, I mean, he's hurt, coming back on the field, getting his whole team fired. Who's doing that on Missouri's walking around like, man, I can't believe we have to play in the rain again. This is really sad.
It was just,
you know?
It was just like South Carolina a year ago, where those South Carolina players, it was like slip and slide for them. They had a great time, and Missouri looked cold and wet, and like they just wanted to get on a bus.
When Taylor Powell came in, did that rally the troops at all? It seemed a
I
little
did
bit.
think the receivers, when they got the ball, you saw an effort there, and I think that's a good sign. Not to say they don't try for Kelly, but I thought there was some hope there that maybe a change would spark them. But again, you get down to 4th and 2 and you're throwing it to Jacinto, and that's it.
Well, and we'll never be able to prove otherwise because they won't say it, but I don't think the injury is why Kelly Bryant came out of that game. I think he came out of that game because he wasn't playing well.
And if that's a 1-possession game, I don't know if he comes out.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if it's 22-15, I think he stays in there.
And we both counted after the hamstring, he played 7 possessions. Right. If the hamstring was the problem, the hamstring was going to be done earlier.
Yeah, all right. So now, where does this team, this is the $1 million question, where does this team go from here? Bye week, at Georgia, Florida at home. I mean, you could be staring a 4-game losing streak in the face.
That's the problem is they've done this going into their toughest games of the year. Like Georgia and Florida, if they were playing well, might be losses.
Right.
I know what he's done dragging teams off the mat, but he hasn't done it against teams like this. Even last year's Florida team, it was only one game. After that, they had cupcakes, but also that Florida team wasn't as good as this Georgia or Florida team.
And Saturday was his chance to prove, hey, I can do this. I can pull a team off the mat. Instead, they looked worse. So, I don't know if we can count on that trend happening. I do think it's foolish for anybody, including Barry Odom, to think he has a read on how this team is going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it's at Georgia. They're the best team they've played to date. But I don't think anybody can sit here right now and say, well, they'll lose to Tennessee or they'll beat Tennessee, because who knows with these teams.
And can we stop hearing about how well they practice?
Yeah.
I mean, if so, then I don't know what the problem is. Maybe they look like they're practicing well because the guys on the other side of the ball aren't that good. I don't know, but you got to stop that. Yeah.
And if history dictates anything, when they've had a bye week or time to prepare, they've played poorly.
They have. I mean, this year they came out of a bye and they beat Troy. So great. But, yeah, you're right.
It's going to be something. We'll talk about Georgia next week, obviously, with the bye, but the Tigers fall to 2-2 in the SEC, and when you look around the SEC, we know that the West is loaded. The big ones coming up with Alabama and LSU. And really, Georgia and Florida is going to decide it.
In all likelihood, yes. I mean, the weird part is mathematically, technically, I think Missouri still would control its own destiny, but it'll be a big surprise if the Georgia-Florida winner is not in Atlanta playing the LSU-Alabama winner, I assume. I mean, you're deciding the SEC championship game on Saturday.
Yeah, and I will say, Georgia's loss to South Carolina looks worse by the week.
Yep.
And that win over Notre Dame doesn't look all that great now either.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
way Notre Dame got absolutely pounded by Michigan. So it's still all about the West in this league.
Well, in Georgia's, you keep looking at them and go, I think there's more there, right?
Yeah.
I think there's more. Like midway through the season, we were saying that about Clemson. Well, Clemson's killing people now.
Right.
Yep.
Georgia has not really played a good game yet. Yep.
It's amazing when you go into a bye week. It's usually, does it come at a right time? I think it does come at a good time, but at
They
this
can't
point,
lose.
it might not matter.
It might not matter. I think maybe, and Gary Pinkel used to do this. I don't know what Barry's doing this week. He used to kind of just give guys some time away. If they're coming off a bad loss, get away from football for a couple of days. Maybe that's what this team needs. I don't think the fire and brimstone, light a trash can on fire is going to work with this team. I think you need to maybe take the opposite approach and just figure out what is wrong with you guys. And and that starts with the coaches too.
Yeah, I don't know what they do behind closed doors Tuesday through Friday, but whatever they have done the last 2 weeks, it should be the Costanza approach. Do the opposite. Just complete opposite of every instinct you have.
Absolutely. All right, we will take a break because you had plenty to say about this loss, and we will check it on Twitter when we come back. You're watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22. Welcome back to Tiger Sidelines, everybody. Gabe DeArmond, Dave Matter, and I'm Bo Bayman. Of course, at Tiger Sidelines is our Twitter handle. Let's check the old tweet machine. We put out a poll before the game saying, is Mizzou going to beat Kentucky tonight? Had 200 votes. 74% said yes.
See, that's the funny thing. And don't get me wrong, I picked Mizzou in this game, but I said I'm doing this because I have to make a pick. I have no clue. Right. But that's the thing. Part of the reason people get so mad is because no matter what happened last week, by the time the next game starts, they have convinced themselves. I mean, if you put out that poll before Georgia, it's not going to be 74%, but I bet 40% will be yes, because they just believe they're winning every game.
Right. Showtime says, what's the absolute floor for Barry Odom?
5-7.
I mean, it is.
Lives out.
It is 5-7. I have a hard time believing Arkansas is good enough to beat anybody in this league, but if Missouri's lost 5 in a row by then and just doesn't care.
If they've lost 5 in a row and the sanctions are upheld by then and they've got nothing to play for, all bets are off that last week.
Well, and people will talk about this as we go forward. Everybody said the absolute worst they could do is 9-3 this year.
Well, nobody
and here
said
they
that.
are. Well,
nobody said that was the worst.
But there were a lot of people who said that's what they
should do. Right. Yeah. I mean, I said 8-4 was the minimum that you'd look at and go, yeah, this was a decent season, and I don't see how they get to 8.
I don't either.
You got to upset somebody.
I mean, you got to win one of the next 2 and then beat a Tennessee team that's actually a novel concept getting better.
They're getting better, but pump the brakes on Tennessee winning a road game in Columbia yet.
Odom does not run a tight ship. He's a player's coach, which means players getting away with things, no discipline. They're tired of it. He wants to win. Players want to do what they want. Team isn't focused. Coach is too loose. There's got to be a locker room issue.
We like to do. I mean, remember when Gary Pinkel was losing? When people would say, "Why doesn't he do anything on the sidelines? He just stands there." But then Bo Pelini does things on the sideline. Well, we don't. That guy, that's terrible. You can't. When you lose, everything's picked apart. There may be a locker room issue, but I'm not ready to turn the program over to Tristan Colon Castillo quite yet.
Yeah. Mike says, why do you think the real reason why fans have not fully bought into Odom?
Because they've lost 11 games when they're favored to win.
Right.
I mean, that's it. I mean, he just hasn't won enough games. He's lost more games as a favorite in his time at Missouri than any other team in the league.
What could Odom do to turn fans around? Do you think the dislike for their media has to do with fans wanting more from a program that has never been a legit title, consistent contender as a national title?
I'm not sure who he's saying dislikes the media. I don't think Barry, Barry doesn't love doing interviews, but
he's fine. And he's nowhere. I mean, there are coaches in this league around the country that are worse than, and he's fine.
Honestly, what can he do? He can't do anything this year because if he wins out, everybody's going to go, wait, you finished 9-3 and lost to 3 of the 4 worst teams on your schedule. Like this year, he can't win them back.
Right.
Not this year.
Right. Steve says, are influential football boosters working to explore making a head coaching change?
Okay, can we stop there real quick?
Yeah.
The boosters at Missouri don't do that. No. This is not Auburn.
Right.
And it shouldn't be. Auburn is a soap opera mess where these guys are trying to fire Gus Malzahn every week. Missouri has probably one guy that has enough money that he donates to Missouri that could go to Jim Sturk and say this needs to change, and it's not ever going. That's not how it happens here,
right?
And it shouldn't happen that way.
One of Saturday's broadcasters said Albert O is often not able to stay on the field due to lack of conditioning. Do you agree?
I think that was kind of misinterpreted or miscommunicated from when they talkked about Albert. He barely leaves the field. I mean, he plays a lot.
He played all but 13 snaps.
He just doesn't play well. I mean, he's just not. He's not. They're not targeting him. He's not catching the ball cleanly. I think he leads the league in drops, and he's not a great blocker.
And this is how things get out there. And, look, we all know one of the guys that did the game Saturday. Great guy, does a good job. But when you put something like that on the game broadcast, it is accepted as fact, and that's simply not what Barry said. Now, fortunately, I think as many people watch Tiger Sidelines as watched the Kentucky game on ESPN2, or SEC Network or whatever. Right.
Is Kelly Bryant seeing open receivers late?
I mean, without being in his head, you don't really know what he's seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't get the ball out very quick. That's fair to say.
Would you be encouraged to throw the ball to these receivers? They looked at times like they were trying to bat it into the stands.
How is KB's hamstring?
We'll find out. Well, no, we won't find out on Wednesday. We will ask on Wednesday.
A week from today.
Yeah. He's on the SEC teleconference today. So he will be asked, and Kelly will be day to day, and if there was a game today, he would play.
I mean, he was good enough to play 7 possessions.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless he made it worse somehow.
Jason says, based on previous behavior and what you know of him from your coverage, what do you think Jim Sturk's thoughts on Barry Odom are right now, and how deep is his patience?
I don't think he's real happy right now.
He's not happy, but Jim is very measured. He doesn't make knee-jerk decisions. He knows that there's 33% of the season left, and he's not going to evaluate Barry Odom on what happened in Game 7. That's just how he works. He did that with Kim Anderson for the most part. Yeah. He's not going to do it differently with football and a coach who still has a winning record.
Well, and here's the thing. When anybody says, what do you think Jim Sturk's thinking? Not only do we not know that, nobody in the Missouri Athletic Department knows that. I mean, people don't really, there aren't deep, meaningful conversations. I think he's more of a guy that rules out of, all right, I don't really want you to, I want you to have a little healthy fear here.
Right.
Yeah.
Of what I might do.
His predecessor texted reporters a few times saying, what do you think about this candidate?
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't work that way with Jim Sturk, and nobody expects that.
Yeah. Don't you think that he's thinking a little bit, I wish we were winning more?
Probably. I think that's crossed his mind, yeah. Why did we lose to Vanderbilt in Wyoming?
Yes. If you had to assign blame for the offensive struggles, who gets the most between Dooley, Bryant, the receivers, the line, and the running backs? I'd say the answer is yes.
Well, I actually did this. It's a different answer for the season, but on Saturday, I said the receivers first, And in any other situation, it would have been Derek Dooley first because I thought he was really bad in that game. But the receivers were so bad, they trumped that. Then the line, then Bryant, then the running game, which the weird part to me and to Dave was that it was actually better than they seemed to think it was. Yeah, they ran the ball fine.
Running backs averaged like 4.6 yards a carry. And it's not like they had one 90-yard run that skewed it all. Yeah.
Well, the Broncos spent a first on Albert O to get Locke, a well-known receiver who can be a nightmare matchup.
First of all, NFL teams don't draft teammates because they think there's chemistry. If you're good enough to make it in the NFL as a tight end or receiver, you're good enough to play with whoever they pick you to play with.
Albert's going to get drafted this year. I don't know if it'll be in the first round, but he's going to get drafted. But I'll just tell you right now, that's not an NFL tight end.
No.
Not right now. An NFL coach will kill that kid the way he blocks. He will not put him on the field.
I totally agree.
Larry says, when will we schedule KU in football? What uniforms are we wearing next week? None. What channel's the game on? None. Do you think they'll fire Barry Odom and hire Nick Saban or Dabo? No. Gabe, I'll hang up and listen on air. So the first one, will they ever schedule KU in football?
Stirk has told everybody they hope to have it done by the end of the year. Now, nobody knows when it will happen because Missouri has games scheduled 11 years from now.
Right. If it's going to be within that time frame, they're going to have to play Kansas as a second Power 5. Because I don't think they'll replace Kansas State or Colorado or get one of those games off the schedule.
But Stirk did say that's an option they're looking at. And look, if you're not willing to go out and play Kansas and Illinois or Kansas and Colorado in the same year, then give up. That's not, let's schedule some actual teams people have heard of.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks for all the tweets. Lots of tweets coming in this week as we fully expect off of a loss and off of 2 losses to Vanderbilt and Kentucky. We're at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter here for you, and Brian gets to read them all. All right, when we come back, we'll talk a little men's basketball, and we'll talk the exhibition season. It's been pretty good for the women's basketball team as well. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. That's Gabe and Dave, and I'm Bo. This is Tiger Sidelines, and a couple of quick notes before we get out of here. The women's basketball team, 2 easy wins in the exhibition season, including a 121-40 win last night, and I think Robin Pinchton's team is going to surprise a few people. They're a little bit better than people think.
Yeah, and I think they could be one of those teams that's really up and down, where they might surprise a pretty good team with the freshmen if they can have a night like they had in the first exhibition game, but then go out and look like freshmen and lose a game they're not supposed to lose. So it could be, I think it's going to be an entertaining season.
I kind of like the way the men do it now, though. Like, I know these close scrimmages are done, but what do you get out of running Fontbonne off the floor by 81 points? And what does Fontbonne get out of it?
Right. No doubt. Men's basketball takes on Central Missouri on Friday in the lone exhibition game. What are your thoughts coming up? Well, it's kind of the first time to see something.
Yeah, first time to see Drew Smith and then the 3 freshmen and just kind of see what the rotation kind of looks like. I wouldn't read too much into a game against Central Missouri, but
2 minutes in, Konzo's subbing somebody. We know that. And look, there's only one goal in this. Everybody's healthy.
Right.
That's the only goal for Friday night.
Absolutely. All right. Volleyball won a couple. They beat Arkansas and Mississippi State. They're now 14-4, 6-2. They'll go to Texas A&M on Sunday. Soccer loses 2 more. Getting beat by Alabama and Texas A&M. The team misses the SEC tournament, so their final game is Thursday against Mississippi State. Before we leave you, big game of the week, Georgia and Florida. Who you got?
I like Florida right now. I just think they're playing better. I think they're a more complete team. They're okay with winning ugly too, and I think that favors them in this game.
Everything tells me to pick Florida, and the worst team wins this game every single year. So I think Georgia wins.
I wonder how the weather will be, seriously, because how many rain games have there been in the SEC this game?
Tons.
And it does make a difference because, we saw it last week.
Also, it matters when it rains harder, because clearly it only rained when Missouri had the ball on Saturday. Kentucky was playing sunny and 60.
With the bye week, what did the Tigers do this week? Hopefully get away from football, as you said, Dave?
Yeah, I would think that would be ideal for them. And then just I think the coaches need to look at this team, especially on offense, and say, what do we do well? And let's focus on that instead of trying to, mess around and do something that they can't do very well.
Their goal every week should be win 17-14. It should be hand the ball to, and it should have been Saturday night. It never was. Hand the ball to Roundtree, hand the ball to Beatty, bring Dawson Downing in on short yardage. And yeah, we're going to punt a lot, but let's just try not to do it in 27 seconds.
Do they go back and watch Ole Miss and say, what were we doing right?
They did something right that game.
Yeah.
They challenged the offensive line. The offensive line came out with a great game. You know, they moved the ball at will for the most part. I don't know where that team is right now.
And neither does Barry Odom, and he's searching for it, no doubt about it. So next week, we'll talk more about the Georgia game. We kind of left that off since it is the bye week. We'll get you ready for the Bulldogs. We'll see what they did against Florida and see if Missouri, for Georgia, is kind of for the lead in the division.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's crazy as that is to say, but I guess that in theory that is true. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. For Bill and Matt and Brian behind the scenes, that's Dave Matter, that's Gabe DeArmond, and I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks as always for watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22.